There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Well, Freddie from Malaysia is back, and not only from Malaysia, but also from the fabulous BookTube channel, A Sluggish Reader. Freddie, welcome back.
Thank you.
And you're here to tell us about a really tantalizing sounding novel from Trinidad, The Bread, the Devil. Oh, now. Oh, how do you pronounce the past of Knead? The past of read is pronounced red. Is the past of need Ned?
That makes sense.
I think I'm going to look that up, and we're going to leave this little exchange in. That's, I think, Oxford Dictionary will have audio pronunciation. As I was just about to read the title, I thought, oh, okay, the grammar, this is the past. Or otherwise it would be the bread the devil needs. So it must be the past. So how is that pronounced? Okay, let's the grammar geek in me is geeking out right now.
Yeah. Or another thing is that could it be in the form of the kind of grammar that one would see in the Trinidadian Creole?
Because, that is highly possible.
Yeah, because they don't really conjugate, as in like for the third person singular kind of a present verb. So there wouldn't be an S over there, I believe.
Yeah, everything I'm finding that conjugates it has it as a regular verb. Needed for the past. So yeah. I think we'll go with your. That's a great theory. Let's go with that. Let's try this again. The Bread the Devil Knead by Lisa Allen-Agostini came out about a year ago, last spring, but is getting a whole bunch of attention recently because it's on the Women's Prize long list for 2022. And you read it and you were quite impressed by it, Freddie. Tell us why.
I thought it was a good novel. So this book is about this woman who lives in Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago. Her name is Alethea. And outwardly, she's a successful woman working as a store manager. And this is how most of the characters see her in this book. But at the same time, one side of her life that she hides from everyone is that she's living in a very abusive relationship with her partner. And so this book sort of takes us along how she navigates that kind of life, how she rationalized the things that happened to her throughout her relationship. And one day, she witnesses a woman being murdered by a jealous partner. And this event shakes her to her core. And so it sort of causes her to reevaluate her own circumstances and how she perceives her own life. And she starts to sort of weigh in her options and see if what she's doing to herself is sort of like what she wants or not. And so the story sort of takes off from there, and we see the kinds of decisions that she would make later for her life.
And she's 39, right, as the novel opens. She's just pushing 40, as they say.
Pushing 40, yeah.
Sounds, from what I'm seeing in your review and the review of other bookish friends, that it's really a strongly character-driven novel.
I would say it is. Most of the things that we see, how the events unfold, are basically just driven by what Alethea decides to do. So definitely we see a lot of character development at the same time as well. I think that really makes sense because this is a novel that deals a lot with grief and also a lot of abuse going on in here, and certainly involves how this character is trying to process all of those negative emotions.
And so who are some of the other characters? Do we get a lot about her partner?
Yes, actually, I would say that the main male character in this book is her partner. Alethea, she also engages in another relationship that she hides from her partner for obvious reasons. But we see a lot of her partner in this book and how her partner treats her as well.
Some of the reviews mention intergenerational trauma.
Yes. One of the things that people mention about this book is how it's written in Trinidadian Creole.
Uh-huh.
And that is sort of related to this topic of intergenerational trauma, because another thing that is not really mentioned as much is that this book is written in partly Trinidadian Creole and partly in Standard English. So it's kind of like half and half. And the part that concerns the intergenerational trauma is very heavily explored in the part that is written in Standard English, actually. And it's written totally in a different point of view, third person. So yeah, you certainly get more exploration on Alethea as a child in that part of the novel.
And do some of her, like for example, her parents or siblings, do they emerge as fairly major or minor characters?
Major characters and very spoilery as well. So
okay, so we're not going to say any more about that.
Anything about that. The kinds of things that are sort of revealed in that portion is very powerful, and it lets us know why Alethea is the kind of person that she is in the present storyline.
And these are all fairly heavy issues that are at play in this novel. Would you describe the tone as consistently very serious?
We have two different writing styles, so to speak. So we have the Standard English and we have the Trinidadian Creole. Both have different tones. So the one that concerns with Alethea's childhood, the Standard English part, one feels kind of detached and doesn't have so much emotion. And so when we read that part of the story, we feel that a certain distance from the characters, especially Alethea as a child. So the tone is definitely quite, I would say, closer towards objective. It doesn't feel very judgy. The other one, which is taking place in the present, the Trinidadian Creole part, that one is narrated by Alethea herself. And the tone is very different. It feels very intimate. And it sort of feels as if Alethea, she is trying to project an image to her friends, that's for sure. But it's as if she's trying to project an image to us, the readers, as well. Like she's trying to convince us that her life is in control, everything is good. And so she uses language that feel sort of positive, that feels like there's a lot of rationalization, justification in there, denial also. And so I wouldn't say it feels jarring, because there are a lot of part that sort of feels funny. You might even giggle in some places.
Okay.
But they certainly talk about like really heavy subjects. She would use language that feels very casual and just doesn't betray like how hurt she is.
If you don't like this question, I will delete my question and your answer, but let's try it. Why didn't you give it 5 stars?
It's sort of difficult to explain. 4 and 5, usually the difference is very minor. And yeah, in many cases, it's quite inexplicable. It just feels as if there is something missing. Okay. Doesn't mean that the book is bad or anything.
No, 4 stars. Enjoy it. 4 stars is a very good rating.
I try to be less generous with my stars.
Okay,
recently.
You're being stingy. But you would recommend this to others, obviously.
Yes, definitely. I think it's a very good one.
Your recommendation has landed with me, so I'm looking forward to giving it a try. Freddie, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Kezia from Ohio is back. Kezia, hello.
Hi.
I was just telling you offline how envious I am that you are doing a lot of reading for pleasure while you're a full-time university student. Good for you.
Oh, thank you. Always a balance.
You find that it's a good way to chill out and de-stress from all of your studies?
Yeah, especially since I'm doing like biology, so a little science and math. And then after doing all of that, I just get to read and for a moment just forget about my life.
When I was a university student, and I guess because I was taking a lot of English lit classes, I didn't have time to do any reading for pleasure, although a lot of the books that I studied, I loved. But yeah, so I envy you. That's good. We are here to talk about one that you've read recently, and you wrote a fabulously nuanced, detailed review, and it's a book that you had some problems with, but that you urge other readers to try. So I thought, oh, this would be a great one. I usually only have guests on bite-sized book chats to talk about books they liked or loved, and your reaction to this book was a little more complicated, but I think this would make a really fascinating conversation. So I suppose, Sean, the book maniac, that you should mention the title and author. So let's do that. It's an African novel called His Only Wife by Peace Adzo Medie. And she is a Ghanaian writer currently living and teaching in the UK, born in Liberia, but she describes herself as a Ghanaian writer. And with that said, Kezia, tell us about the opening premise of this novel.
All right. So we're introduced to a character called Afi. And, I'm going to try and be close to the synopsis. But Afi and her mom are living a hard life ever since the mom's husband, which is Afi's father, died. So in this culture, it's very common for men to propose to the family instead of like men directly proposing to the wife. So she gets this proposal, and of course the mom is like, wow, you should definitely do this because the guy is very rich. His name is Elikim. And Afi is hesitant. Afi is more modern, so of course she's hesitant. But after the hard life, she's like, this could actually change their life, could bring opportunities. So she accepts, but Elikim actually has baggage. So he's with another woman, and the family doesn't like the woman. So the family is actually hoping that Afi marrying Elikim can essentially change his mind into leaving that woman and committing to Afi alone.
That sounds fascinating. So when you say the family, do you mean Elikim's family?
Yes, that's what I mean.
So like his parents and siblings?
Yeah.
Okay, so very interesting. And the story is set in Ghana?
Yes.
And is it the cultural polygamy?
Yeah, it is common in Ghana.
Yeah,
I do
so
know
it's
that.
the traditional cultural practice, very problematic for the modern eye, especially for Westerners, but not only for Westerners. And so they hope he will fall in love with Afi.
Yeah.
And forget about the first wife.
Oh, no, I should probably clarify. Did I say he's married? Because I didn't mean to say that. He's not married to the first wife. He's just with her.
Shacked up.
Yeah. That's where the story, like, does she get to convince him? Does he leave the wife? So that's the setup,
Great. Okay, great. You struggled a bit with this book. Tell us a bit about that. And we all know that this is a spoiler-free conversation, but tell us about some of the problems that you had.
I think my first struggle is I try to be very careful with books that are very culturally based, because what if I say something that's like, well, that's their culture. So, the way women are depicted in this story, women are constantly like, if the man is acting a certain way, it's a woman's fault. So immediately I was very like, that is very, very uncomfortable. Even the whole premise of Afi changing the Elikim's mind was like, I wouldn't want any woman to feel like it's their job to change your mind. So originally I was very uncomfortable with that premise, but of course I still want to see if change my mind. And in the synopsis, it does give a hint that she is going to find it is a question saying, is Afi able to find her independence? She does find some independence later in the book, but I don't like how it was, like, I don't like her trigger, if that's the right word, because there were so many other instances that I feel like should have triggered her instead of what actually triggered her.
As you were reading, or now that you've had time to think about it after you finished, because you finished the book quite recently, right?
I did, yeah.
Is your sense that the author piece, Adzo Medie, was telling a story with those issues, those feminist progressive issues in mind, or that the story suffered from a lack of awareness about those issues? What the author's intentions? I mean, we won't know if we could do some research and read some interviews with the author, but
this is very culturally based. I think she was hinting a lot that this is something that happens in the culture. Women are treated this way, women are seen this way. So it is something I think I said in my view, like it's very realistic portrayal of women in that culture. So I think she was trying to be realistic.
You felt emotionally connected to Afi. You were rooting for her.
Yes.
And without going into anything spoilery, did you feel by the end that she was on some kind of a trajectory, some kind of a journey where there was hope that she would not be stuck in these cultural, that she would not be completely, that she would somehow be liberated from the heavy cultural stuff?
For sure.
Okay.
Again, not to get into anything spoilery.
Yeah.
But I like that she does realize a lot of things as she goes through. It was just really triggered because it's like she realizes it, then she falls back.
One step forward.
Yeah, and then she goes back. And it comes back to like the things that she was triggered by, or what actually finally triggered her into acting into like the independent woman she's supposed to be. It was a bit rough. Oh yeah. But
so there was quite a few things in this book about her that she experienced, things that were done to her, things she got mixed up, she got enmeshed in, that were problematic, that were triggering for you.
Yes. I don't know if I mentioned this in my review, but a lot of it was also like people pleasing. So I guess personally, I've always had a problem with people pleasing. It wasn't until recently that I had to definitely stop people pleasing because it wasn't good for my mental health. And it was a lot in this book where it was just like, please stand up for yourself. And it wasn't happening till a very long time. So
now, do you feel it was worth it for you going through all that roller coaster of emotions as you were reading it? You do recommend that others try it and that they go into it with an open mind, but are you glad you read it?
I am, because I liked how real it was. I still think it could have been done a better way. And this is coming from someone who doesn't write, so feel free to disregard my opinion, but I just don't think it was done the right way. But I can see the intention. I love the realistic portrayal, because sometimes we don't need the perfect story. We need a real woman going through some real things. So I would definitely still recommend it.
Okay. So I just want to be clear without going into spoilers, what you mean that it wasn't done the right way. So you liked the writing and it was good characterization, but you would have liked something more, something different in the story, in the characterization.
Yeah, I think I would have liked the growth to be done a better way. And in my review, I do mention that growth shouldn't be perfect.
Her journey is a little messy.
Yeah.
Most of our journeys are, most of our lives are, but it was a chaotic reading experience for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it sounds complex and complicated and messy, and that you're giving people a really good sense of what they're in for if they try it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Trish from Liverpool is back, gracing us with her presence. Hello again, Trish.
Hi, Sean. We
are here to talk about a novel by the American writer Tiffany McDaniel, who I know nothing about because everything that I thought I did, we just checked it on the internet and none of it was true. The novel is from 2016, I believe, The Summer That Melted Everything by Tiffany McDaniel. Trish, you recently read it and I believe you loved it.
I did. Thank you,
Sean. Tell us all about it.
This is my copy. And I went back and read it after reading Betty by the same author. So Betty's been really popular. over the last year or so, and I really liked it and thought, I'll have a look and see if the author's done anything else. So this one passed me by a few years ago, so I was glad to go back and pick it up. So it's set in a town called Breathitt in Ohio, and there is a heat wave in this particular summer in the 1980s. And the main character's father, who's called Autopsy, no idea why, but that's what he's called, Autopsy Bliss.
Autopsy Bliss, and he's the local prosecutor.
He is.
All
and
right.
he publishes a letter in the local newspaper to invite the devil to town. So that's the background we start with. So his son, Fielding, is in front of the town courts in the little town doing the shopping on this particular day, and Sal walks into his life and says, I'm the devil. This is a 13-year-old boy. This is how he presents himself, a 13-year-old boy, but I'm the devil. So that's the start. And they take him into their home because they think he's a runaway and they want to keep him safe. And they take him into their home. And most of the time he acts like a 13-year-old boy. So in the back of your head, you don't really have any idea of where this devil story is coming from. I've never been to America. I've never been to a small town in America. I love small town America books. Mm-hmm. I love the whole ethos of them. I love reading them. I love reading about them. How true they are, how accurate, I don't know, because that's not my background, but I do love the books about it. So this fits every stereotype of small town America. There's the religious thing thrown in. There's racism. There's homophobia. It's all there, and all this is packaged in this evil. Is it the devil's fault? Is it the small town's fault? Lots of catastrophic things happen, and I can't spoil the story by saying any of those because they're not given away in this. And this is Fielding's recollection in his old age about this particular summer, and you get the flashbacks to the summer and some of the things that have happened in his life since. He's a very unhappy man by what happened in this particular summer, and the impact it has on his life afterwards is absolutely massive. The writing is beautiful. The story doesn't, if you like a story with a neat, tidy ending and a little bow, this isn't for you. It doesn't do that. You still have as many questions at the end of it, but it's fantastic. It's claustrophobic. You feel the whole heat of the heat wave in the summer, which obviously the religious people start saying is because of the presence of the devil and all those things. And it's a phenomenon in the country, you know, cameras, the journalists come and say this heat wave's been going on for this long. So you don't quite know, is this a weather thing or is it a devil thing? So it's fascinating, and the writing is wonderful.
Okay, so this is really interesting because as you were describing the bare bones skeleton of the plot and naming the characters like Autopsy Bliss, I was thinking this must be some kind of a comedy. But then to listen to you go further into the plot and your reaction to the story, it doesn't sound like that. So that having this guy with a goofy name, Autopsy Bliss and so on, doesn't keep you outside of the story. Like you can really enter into the emotions of the story.
When you start reading, I did exactly the same as you said and said, what sort of daft names are these for characters? Well, who gives their child a name of Autopsy? So you do have that, but then you just get swept up so much by the story, and the characters in this family are amazing characters who the descriptions of them, and you just get so involved in their story. And I can't, if I said any more, I'd be giving away some of the main plot things that basically come and hit you in the head as they happen. So I wouldn't like to spoil that, but don't be put off by reading it and saying, oh, I don't want to read a book about the devil and small town and people with daft names. It's wonderful read.
You have done a fantastic job of selling the book to me, because when I read that the protagonist's father was named Autopsy Bliss, I was a little skeptical, but you have.
Thank you, Sean.
I'm absolutely delighted to have a brand new guest making her bite-sized book chats debut, Bonnie from Buffalo, New York. Bonnie, welcome.
Thank you, Sean. I'm happy to be here.
This is very exciting. So Bonnie and I follow each other on Twitter, and neither one of us remember who started that, who began that relationship, but she tweeted recently about a novel that is right in my wheelhouse. It's published in 1954 by a British female writer, and I'd never heard of the writer or the book. It is called The Tortoise and the Hare by Elizabeth Jenkins. And like I say, published in 1954 and now brought back maybe in 1998 by Virago. And you loved this book, Bonnie.
I did. This is the book. This is my Virago edition of the book.
A lovely copy.
It's the kind of book that I am really drawn to, mostly a character study, not a full action drama. So people who like that kind of book might not find this book to their liking. Right. But to me, a character study like this is right up my alley. So I really loved it. It's a story set in England, the English countryside, in the early 1950s. It's the story of Evelyn Gresham, who's 52 years old. He's a barrister, a quite successful barrister in London. And his wife, Imogen, typical of the time, she does not work anywhere. Her whole life is devoted to her husband and her 11-year-old son, Gavin. And the third protagonist who's important to the story is their neighbor, Blanche Silcox, who is a tweed-wearing 50-year-old, could be described in the beginning of the novel as a little bit dumpy, but having an avid interest in fishing, hunting, racing, the kinds of things that men like. And
not your stereotypical female of the 1950s.
Exactly. And I just want to emphasize that this story, it's, pretty much from the beginning of the book, that this is a story about these three individuals. And not too far along in the story, the reader gets the idea that this is going to be about a marriage that's in trouble. Imogen is a passive woman. She has been that way for her entire marriage of 12 years, not untypical of that time. Blanche is the odd one. She's been in business. She's never married. She's kind of a takeover kind of person. She is described at one point as being in charge of their neighborhood. Evelyn describes her that way,
right? Because
she's so outgoing and will get different things going in the neighborhood. And so she's very different from Imogen. As the story progresses, we see Evelyn being drawn more and more to Blanche, and Imogen being like the dutiful wife with blinders on, totally unaware.
She's oblivious.
Yes. And the beauty of the book to me was this slow reveal that Elizabeth Jenkins narrated of how this marriage is falling apart or unraveling.
We're not going to say too much more about the way that the disintegration, how these people get all mixed up together, because that's for the reader to find out when they read the book. How about the title?
Yeah, one of the people involved, of course, is the tortoise, and the other one is the hare. And you find out as the story progresses that just like the adage about the tortoise and the hare, the same is true of the two women in this story.
Yep.
It's not always the hare racing to the finish. The tortoise gets there, and
slow and steady wins the race.
Yes, exactly.
I can see how it would be really easy for the character Blanche to be an unsympathetic character. Is there nuance so that there's no black and white characters?
As a woman, speaking as a woman, Blanche from page one, she doesn't appear on page one, but right from the beginning of the story, No, she's not sympathetic. At least I didn't view her as a sympathetic character. Evelyn, on the other hand, at first you think, he's got his interests and he's a little bit demeaning to his wife, but she's so into herself that you can almost understand him. But as the novel progresses, you see that the way he treats her and the remarks he makes to her make you think that she has been kind of bullied all her married life. She doesn't view it that way, of course. She just looks at it as her role because she's such a passive woman. Blanche is just the opposite. But that's the thing about the story. That's what makes this triangle.
And Imogen herself, there's nuance there, or there's some sort of an arc, a narrative arc for her that she grows or something.
Yes. It's that slow reveal. She eventually starts to see what everybody else can see, what all of us can see, and starts to think about how she's going to move forward. What is she going to do? At that time, getting a divorce was not easily accepted, and it was a hard thing to do. She didn't know what she would do. She's never worked. Where would she go? She had no idea of how to operate in a world where she didn't have Evelyn to tell her, do this, do that, go here, go there. She had no idea. So that was very difficult.
And by the way, offline, you said that Backlisted podcast, they devoted an episode to this novel.
Yes.
So I will put a link to that in the show notes, and I'm going to do what you did. You read the novel before you listened to the episode, and I will do the same. But they're wonderful over there on Backlisted. So Elizabeth Jenkins and this novel, not extremely well known. You are widely read of British women writers of this era. Who would you compare her to, or her novel to give people an idea? Like, if you like this, you might like this.
She has been compared to Elizabeth Bowen.
Okay, well, that's high praise.
And also to Barbara Pym.
Okay, I'm sold. Is it humorous in the Pymmian way?
Yes.
Oh,
yes. There is some humor. I'll just read two sentences. Her description, she knows how to take down a character like you wouldn't believe. But her sentences, I would compare some of her writing to Anita Bruckner too. But anyway, she's describing Blanche's stepsister, Marcia. Marcia took great care of her person and appearance, though she had allowed herself to become fat. As her constitution required her to rest in bed till 12:30 and drink 2 double gins before lunch, it was difficult for her to avoid increasing weight.
I resemble that remark. Bonnie, thanks to you, I'm totally sold. This is your debut. It's not your last appearance on Bite-Sized Book Chats, I hope.
Well, I'd be happy to come back. I really enjoyed it, John.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.